in the medieval world, where life was shaped by simple routines, communal cooperation, and the quiet expectations passed down through generations. Water existed as one of the few universal freedoms, and for centuries people moved through their days with an unspoken assurance that this essential gift from nature belonged equally to every soul who walked the earth. Because rivers flowed without boundaries, streams wound through villages like living veins of the land, and wells stood open in crowded squares, offering cold, fresh relief to anyone who lifted the bucket. Peasants began their mornings by gathering at the well with woven baskets and clay jars. Women washed vegetables in shallow streams while gossiping about market news. Shepherds guided their flocks across muddy banks so the animals could drink, and children spent afternoons splashing barefoot in the clear, sunlit edges of the river, their laughter echoing against stone bridges and wooden mills, all without ever imagining that a time could come when someone might claim ownership over something so natural, so abundant, so intertwined with daily survival that it felt like air itself. And indeed, air and water shared a spiritual connection in medieval belief, for both were considered divine gifts rooted in the will of God, not objects that human beings could sell or hoard. And this understanding shaped community life so deeply that the idea of placing restrictions on water would have sounded not only foolish but ungodly. Priests spoke of water as a symbol of purity, life, and renewal. Monks preserved texts describing it as the blood of the earth, and farmers depended on it as the cornerstone of every harvest. And because of this collective respect, water became the closest thing medieval society had to a guaranteed right. No matter how poor or powerless you were, you could at least drink freely, wash your hands, and fill a bucket without fear of punishment or payment. An experience that brought a quiet sense of equality to a world otherwise divided sharply between lords and laborers, castles and cottages, privilege and poverty. But history has always carried within it a troublesome pattern. Whenever something essential is free, and whenever people have learned to depend on it without paying, some ambitious, calculating, an overly imaginative individual eventually decides that this situation is intolerable, inefficient, or a wasted opportunity. And somewhere in the folds of medieval Europe, such a mind finally emerged. One nobleman, one petty official, one arrogant bureaucrat whose appetite for authority and profit outweighed all common sense, and who looked at the freely flowing water not as a blessing, but as an untapped resource slipping through his fingers, a missed chance to assert control, a financial opportunity disguised as natural convenience. And so he began to imagine ways to regulate, restrict, and ultimately charge for what everyone assumed belonged equally to all. And while his motivations may have been wrapped in flowery language about order, maintenance, or public discipline, the truth was much simpler and far more embarrassing. He wanted money, authority, and innovation in greed, and he believed, with the unwavering confidence of a man who had never been told no, that he alone possessed the genius necessary to transform a basic human need into a profitable enterprise. And thus, a quiet tragedy began, one that would twist centuries of tradition, disrupt the peaceful rhythm of village life, and demonstrate how fragile freedom can be when placed at the mercy of someone who who sees the world not as a shared home, but as a collection of assets waiting to be monetized. Yet, before the arrival of this disastrous idea, the medieval world existed in a beautifully simple state regarding water. And this simplicity shaped not only daily habits, but the emotional and social fabric of entire communities. Because gathering water at dawn became a form of social bonding. Washing clothes by the river created a natural space for storytelling. Filling communal barrels during summer droughts encouraged cooperation. And the open flow of water created a subtle sense of unity among people who otherwise lived under strict hierarchies. And this unity was reflected in festivals celebrating spring wells, in blessings performed by traveling monks, in the songs sung by mill workers grinding grain beside flowing streams, and even in the architecture of villages built around central wells that symbolized life itself. So when the time finally came for someone to challenge this ancient balance, the resulting conflict was not merely political or economic tweet, was deeply emotional, almost spiritual, because people felt instinctively that water should remain free, not because a law said so, but because the land itself had taught them so. And thus the story of how medieval water went from a natural right to a regulated commodity is not simply a tale of greed, but a lesson in how one misguided, self-important individual can reshape the daily lives of thousands with a single decree, turning something universally shared into something restricted, something unquestioned into something resented, something peaceful into something needlessly complicated. All because he failed to understand what generations before him had instinctively known, that when you begin to charge people for the very substance of life, you are not just altering an economic system, you are violating a sacred trust between the land and its people. And the consequences of such arrogance echo far beyond the first coin collected at the well. Lord Brackenhale, the man who would forever be remembered as the medieval noble who tried to tax rain, was not an extraordinary villain or a genius dichotomist, but simply a remarkably irritating combination of arrogance, boredom, and ambition. And historians often agree that this disastrous mixture has always been far more dangerous than outright evil, because when a man with too much power and too little common sense decides to improve society, ordinary people usually end up suffering. And this was certainly true in the case of Hale, who governed a modest but prosperous region where farmers relied on open streams and a large central well, and where life had followed the same peaceful routines for generations until the day he abruptly announced that water would no longer be taken freely, but must instead be purchased at a small but strictly enforced rate. To truly understand how such an absurd idea took root, you must picture Hale pacing through the echoing stone corridors of his manor, a stack of reports under his arm, complaining loudly to his advisors about how peasants carelessly consumed valuable resources without accountability, and how, in his view, no society could prosper if essentials remained unregulated, even though his land had prospered perfectly well without his interference for decades. And, as he lectured them, waving his arms dramatically, he imagined himself as a visionary reformer who would bring structure and discipline to an undisciplined population. But in reality, his sudden determination to monetize water grew from something far more petty than grand political strategy: jealousy. For just weeks earlier, neighboring lords had boasted about successfully increasing taxes on bridges, mills, markets, roads, and even fireplaces, and Hale, desperate not to appear less inventive than his peers, convinced himself that he needed a unique financial innovation, something bold, unprecedented, and impressive enough to make others praise his administrative brilliance. And so his gaze eventually settled on the one thing no one had ever dared to tax: water. The substance so fundamental, universal, and sacred that people never imagined it could fall under economic control. But Hale saw in this sacredness not holiness but opportunity, because where others saw natural rights, he saw unclaimed authority. And where others saw God's gift, he saw an untapped revenue stream. And thus he summoned his scribes, drafted a formal decree, and proudly announced to the entire region that all water drawn from the communal well shall henceforth require payment, insisting that the fee was necessary to maintain order, improve infrastructure, and ensure responsible usage, even though everyone knew the well had never required maintenance beyond the occasional bucket replacement, and that Hale's treasury was already more than comfortable. The reaction from the people was immediate and furious, because medieval villagers tolerated many burdens, including crop taxes, road tolls, and mandatory labor. But the idea of paying for something as basic and sacred as water felt not only unjust, but insulting to their dignity and their relationship with the land. And yet, Hale remained blissfully unaware of the social disaster he had unleashed, so blinded by his desire to appear innovative that he ignored the whispering crowds, the scowls from market vendors, and the rising tension simmering through the village streets, and instead he strutted proudly through the fields, imagining future historians praising him for introducing the first regulated water economy, unaware that he would instead become a symbol of medieval stupidity. However, the true collapse of his scheme began not with angry protests, but with rain, because in the very first week of the water tax, dark clouds gathered over the village, and as the storm poured down, peasants rushed outside with buckets, jars, and even old helmets to collect free water, laughing loudly and intentionally within earshot of Hale's guards, treating the situation like a comedic festival rather than a rebellion. And the sight drove Hale into a frustrated rage, because in his mind the people were not merely mocking his decrees, they were stealing from him, stealing water that he had decided belonged to the lordship. And so he made the single most ridiculous political announcement of the medieval era. He declared it illegal to collect rainwater without a paid license, insisting that rain fell onto land belonging to the Lord and therefore belonged to him too. An argument so absurd that even his own advisors exchanged helpless looks, and the scribes hesitated while writing the official proclamation, incredulous that they were being ordered to draft a law that effectively criminalized the sky. Over the next days, Hale's inspectors attempted to enforce the rule, marching through muddy streets in their heavy boots, knocking on doors and demanding to know whether households had collected unauthorized rainwater. But villagers, amused rather than intimidated, began crafting clever excuses, claiming that their jars had accidentally filled, or that the water was for holy washing, or simply refusing to answer at all. And because enforcing the rule required guards to stand outside in storms which they despised, the entire system crumbled into chaos and embarrassment. with Hale shouting angrily about lawlessness, while the villagers quietly sang humorous songs mocking his decree. Songs that spread across neighboring regions and transformed Hale from a respected noble into a medieval punchline. But perhaps the most ironic part of this entire affair was that Hale believed he was modernizing society, introducing a forward-thinking reform that future generations would admire. Yet his policy instead revealed how disconnected a privileged ruler could become from the daily reality of the people he governed. Because while he boasted about economics, the villagers simply wanted to drink, cook, wash, live, and survive without paying for something that had always been theirs. And their resentment grew, not because the fee was high, but because the principle was deeply wrong, violating a boundary older than any kingdom water had belonged to humanity since the dawn of time. And Hale had dared to claim it as his own, not through labor or innovation, but through arrogance. And so the tale of the man who tried to tax the rain stands today as one of medieval history's most unintentionally comedic disasters, a reminder of how greed can twist common sense into absurdity, how power can blind otherwise ordinary men, and how entire communities can come together in shared disbelief at the foolishness of their leaders, creating a legacy not of reform, but of ridicule that continues to echo through historical texts, tavern stories, and the amused imagination of anyone who learns how one man's vanity turned something freely given by the sky into a laughable attempt at personal profit. What made the downfall of Lord Brackenhale's water tax even more extraordinary was the fact that the peasants, despite their frustration, never once resorted to violence, rebellion, or open defiance, but instead chose a far more intelligent, strategic, and ultimately devastating form of resistance that unfolded not with swords or riots, but with quiet cooperation, whispered plans, and an unspoken agreement shared across the entire village that the Baron's foolish policy would collapse under the weight of its own absurdity if they simply refused to take it seriously. And so the people began crafting a network of peaceful sabotage that spread from one household to the next. The farmers, who were usually the most cautious about angering nobles, were the first to adapt by digging small, shallow wells behind their barns under the cover of night, hiding them beneath wooden planks and piles of hay so that guards walking past would see nothing unusual. And these hidden wells quickly became lifelines for entire families, who fetched water from them at dawn before the Baron's inspectors began their daily patrols, while the women of the town developed their own quiet protest by washing their clothes late at night in the farthest reaches of the river where lantern light did not reach, humming old folk songs as they worked, transforming what had once been a casual chore into a silent act of unity against the Baron's greed. Children, meanwhile, were given an unexpected and highly enjoyable role in the resistance, for they became the watchdogs of the village, stationed on rooftops, fences, and tree branches, shouting warnings the moment they spotted an inspector approaching. And because children moved quickly and fearlessly, their alerts spread through the town faster than any guard could walk, allowing families to hide buckets, drain barrels, and pretend they had been doing something entirely different. And the sight of a confused inspector questioning an elderly woman who insisted that the water dripping from her bucket was holy blessing from the heavens became a routine source of amusement in the village. But the most brilliant and comedic tactic came from a group of elderly men who gathered every evening at the local tavern. Their long beards braided with gray, their wrinkles deepened by decades of hard farm work, and who collectively decided that if the Baron was going to invent absurd rules, then they too would invent something absurd. So they created the Water Blessing Guild, a completely fictional religious society dedicated to performing rituals over village wells. And they marched through the streets in robes stitched from mismatched cloth, chanting nonsense verses with impressive seriousness, convincing the Baron's superstitious guards that interfering with their sacred duties would bring curses or illness. And because even Hale himself feared appearing irreverent toward anything that resembled a religious order, he reluctantly allowed the guild to operate freely, unknowingly granting the villagers a perfect cover for their secret water distribution. And thus the guild became the center of the entire resistance, gathering water from the communal well under the pretense of blessing it, and then discreetly transporting it to households throughout the night. As weeks passed, Hale grew increasingly agitated, pacing in circles outside his manor while muttering that his subjects were ungrateful troublemakers who refused to embrace progress. But rather than addressing their concerns or reconsidering his decree, he doubled down on enforcement, ordering more inspections, more patrols, more restrictions, and even demanding written inventories of household water usage. A task so hilariously impractical that even his own scribes struggled to keep straight faces. And the villagers responded not with anger, but with even more creative evasion, submitting wildly exaggerated or obviously fabricated records such as 3 drops used for soup or 1 spoon consumed during contemplation, which infuriated Hale to the point that he nearly threw his own inkpot at a guard who dared to read such reports aloud. The pressure continued building until finally, after months of futile attempts to control the uncontrollable, Hale's entire system collapsed under the combined weight of public mockery, administrative chaos, and the undeniable reality that people would always find a way to access the most basic resource of life. And when the Baron realized that his decree had not only failed, but made him a laughingstock across several neighboring regions, he rescinded the water tax in a humiliating public announcement delivered in a trembling voice on the steps of his manor. Though even then he attempted to save face by claiming he had graciously granted freedom rather than admitting defeat. Yet the villagers, standing in a silent crowd, knew the truth. And for years afterward, they told the story of how their quiet, clever resistance triumphed over the arrogance of a man who tried to control the rain, the rivers, and the wells. A story that became a cherished reminder that sometimes the strongest form of rebellion is simply the refusal to participate in nonsense, that unity can overwhelm even the most foolish laws, and that the natural world, especially something as pure and essential as water, will always resist the grasping hands of those who seek to claim it as their own. And so the tale of the peaceful resistance against Hale's water tax endures not just as a historical anecdote, but as a testament to the power of collective wisdom, humor, and quiet courage in the face of unnecessary oppression. In the medieval world, where life was shaped by traditions older than memory and customs passed down through countless generations, salt stood as one of the most essential substances of daily existence. a mineral so vital that it touched nearly every part of life, from preserving meat through harsh winters to seasoning the simplest meals, from treating wounds to performing religious rituals. But for centuries, despite its usefulness and value, salt remained accessible to ordinary people without oppressive restrictions, and its availability created a rare sense of stability in a world otherwise dominated by hierarchy, poverty, and unpredictable harvests, because peasants could gather salt from shallow coastal ponds. Merchants could trade blocks of it without excessive interference, and families could keep enough stored in their homes to survive long winters and lean summers. It was understood by everyone, from humble shepherds to wealthy traders, that while salt was precious, it was not something a single man could claim ownership over, and certainly not something that should be taxed so heavily that common people could barely afford it. But as with water, history has a persistent and unpleasant habit of making simple things complicated, especially when ambitious minds begin searching for ways to turn necessities into profits. And somewhere in the sprawling tangle of medieval kingdoms, a ruler emerged whose greed far exceeded his wisdom, a man so determined to impress his fellow nobles with his innovative leadership that he convinced himself he could improve society by taking control of salts, something that had already functioned perfectly well for centuries without his interference. Highly monetized commodity. This ruler, Lord Gareth of Holdernford, was known throughout the region not for generosity, courage, or intelligence, but for his obsession with wealth and his unshakable belief that he possessed a rare brilliance unmatched by any of his contemporaries. And although his court advisors tried repeatedly to steer his focus toward more sensible matters, such as improving farmland irrigation or repairing the crumbling stone bridges that linked the villages, Gareth remained fixated on one idea that had taken root in his mind. If he could control salt, he could control the economy, the merchants, and by extension, the people themselves, because salt preserved food, and whoever controlled preservation controlled survival, a thought that thrilled him far more than it frightened him. And so he summoned his scribes, paced across the marble tiles of his great hall, and declared that henceforth all salt within his territory would become the property of the lordship, and that no household merchant or fisherman would be allowed to produce, harvest, sell, or even store it without paying a substantial tax. He believed, with the unwavering confidence of someone who had never worked a day in his life, that his decree would create a stable and organized salt economy. But what it created instead was a catastrophe that spiraled into misery, hunger, and black market chaos. Because the moment salt became expensive, the poorest families found themselves unable to preserve their food for winter. Fishermen struggled to treat their catches before they spoiled, and entire villages began suffering from shortages that had never existed before. Yet, Gareth remained oblivious to the suffering around him, too busy celebrating his economic triumph with imported feasts and fine wine to notice that his subjects were growing increasingly desperate. The situation worsened dramatically when he ordered his guards to search homes and confiscate any salt that had not been properly taxed, and peasants watched helplessly as soldiers marched into their cottages, sweeping salt from tables into sealed bags, measuring every grain as if it were gold, and leaving families with nothing but spoiled food and empty shelves. Yet rather than rebelling, the people responded with the type of quiet cleverness that often emerges when survival is at stake. Fishermen began hiding small pouches of salt inside hollowed wooden oars. Merchants disguised salt as flour in dull-colored sacks. Mothers sewed tiny salt pockets into the hems of their children's clothes, and smugglers carved out loaves of bread to hide contraband before sealing them back together with egg wash. And even the priests joined the resistance by blessing holy stones during rituals, stones that turned out to be chunks of illegally mined salt wrapped in linen, which the guards dared not confiscate for fear of committing sacrilege. As Gareth intensified enforcement, convinced that his brilliance was merely being sabotaged by lazy subjects who refused to adapt to progress, the underground salt trade grew even more sophisticated, with entire networks of tunnels dug beneath market squares where smugglers exchanged information, pouches and coin by candlelight, and secret signals developed between households, such as lanterns placed in windows to indicate which homes were safe for trading, or woven patterns on laundry lines that warned neighbors when guards were patrolling. These quiet acts of defiance created a powerful sense of unity among the people, who understood that surviving Gareth's salt tax required cooperation, intelligence, and unwavering commitment to protecting one another. And as months passed, the people grew stronger, their networks more efficient, their operations more discreet, while Gareth grew increasingly paranoid, convinced that a grand conspiracy was forming against him, though he never considered for a moment that the conspiracy he imagined was nothing more than the natural result of his own oppressive greed. His downfall began when a traveling merchant who had been caught smuggling salt inside hollowed chair legs was brought before him, and instead of begging for mercy, the merchant calmly explained that people would continue resisting not because they hated Gareth, but because no one, no king, no soldier, no noble had the right to claim ownership over something as fundamental to survival as salt. And while Gareth shouted angrily for the guards to silence the man, the words continued spreading through the court, whispered from servant to soldier to advisor, until eventually even Gareth's closest allies began questioning the sanity of a policy that had damaged the economy, starved citizens, crippled trade routes, and turned Gareth into a figure of widespread ridicule. The final blow came when neighboring kingdoms began mocking him openly in council halls, calling him the salt tyrant and composing satirical poems about his obsession. And faced with spiraling humiliation, political pressure, and a populace on the edge of revolt, Gareth finally reversed the salt tax in a desperate attempt to restore his reputation, claiming he had granted mercy rather than admitting that his decree had been a disaster. Yet, even after the tax ended, the people did not forget what they had endured. And the story of Lord Gareth's attempt to monopolize salt became a cautionary tale passed down through generations, reminding all who heard it that when rulers try to control the necessities of life, they do not gain power, they lose the trust of the people, and trust, once broken, cannot be taxed, purchased, or restored with decrees, for it lives only in the hearts of those who remember. The unfolding chaos of Lord Gareth's salt tax did not simply affect peasants and merchants. It seeped into every corner of medieval society, illustrating in painfully vivid detail how attempting to control a universal necessity can unravel the social fabric. And as the weeks passed, the ramifications became increasingly complex, stretching far beyond the immediate confiscation of salt to touch food security, trade networks, religious practices, and even personal relationships. Because salt was no ordinary commodity, it was essential for preserving meats, cheeses, and fish, and without it, entire households faced the grim prospect of spoiled food, starvation during winter months, and the ever-present anxiety of feeding children on dwindling resources. And as families scrambled to secure what little salt they could, tension grew in the streets, market squares, and homes, quietly simmering beneath polite conversation and the outward appearance of routine, while Gareth, blissfully unaware of the true depth of disruption he had caused, continued his bureaucratic obsession, issuing more decrees, tightening inspections, and attempting to track every grain of salt that moved within his domain, believing that order and compliance could be achieved through fear and regulation alone, but underestimating the creativity, determination, and sheer audacity of his subjects, who had quickly adapted to the constraints imposed upon them with a combination of ingenuity and subtle defiance. And the villagers' methods of resistance became increasingly elaborate as the initial humor of the situation faded into necessity. 4 families constructed hidden caches beneath floorboards, false walls, and even buried containers in churchyards. And children were enlisted to ferry small pouches from one house to another under the pretense of playing errands, while merchants perfected a complex system of coded language, inconspicuous signals, and secret exchanges in the market, transforming what could have been simple smuggling into a coordinated network of logistical sophistication. And the clergy, realizing that the well-being of their parishioners was under threat, intervened subtly, blessing ritual salt that doubled as hidden stock, preaching sermons that encouraged moral obedience to God rather than men, and even assisting in distributing small quantities to families who would otherwise have gone without. And this unspoken alliance between villagers and priests created a moral and practical challenge that Gareth could not navigate, because every attempt to punish participants risked alienating influential church figures who wielded social power equal to, or sometimes greater than, his own. And as the network expanded, the economy itself became distorted. 4 markets were flooded with clandestine salt of uncertain origin. Prices fluctuated wildly, and trade routes became conduits for secret transactions, forcing Gareth to assign inspectors to roads and river crossings, who quickly became demoralized, bribed, or co-opted by the very people they were meant to monitor, while merchants devised false inventories, swapped labels, and used decoy shipments to maintain both profit and supply. And even as Gareth issued increasingly severe penalties for violations, imprisonment, and temporary seizure of property, the villagers' creative evasion techniques multiplied. Because in any system where survival is at stake, the human mind is remarkably adaptable, and where greed and overreach collide, humor and cunning emerge as weapons more powerful than brute force. And the irony of the situation was not lost on the people themselves, who composed songs, poems, and dramatic street performances that satirized Gareth's obsession with control, mocking his proclamations, exaggerating his paranoia, and turning the man into a figure of ridicule across not only his domain but neighboring regions, which led to diplomatic embarrassment and social isolation for the noble, who believed that his administrative genius should be celebrated rather than mocked. And yet, despite mounting humiliation, Gareth stubbornly refused to reconsider his strategy, issuing orders for more rigorous inspections, personally questioning merchants, and even attempting to introduce licenses for domestic salt use, a plan so impractical that his advisors quietly begged him to abandon it while pretending obedience. And as the village endured months of scarcity, hidden smuggling, and clandestine distribution, a new form of communal solidarity emerged, one rooted in shared adversity, collective intelligence, and the determination to protect one another from an unjust policy. And families learned to communicate in coded ways, synchronize movements to evade inspection, and build trust across neighborhoods, fostering a sense of unity that was both practical and deeply emotional, reinforcing community bonds that had existed for generations but had never been tested so thoroughly. And while Gareth's name became synonymous with absurdity, the villagers' ingenuity became legendary, demonstrating that control over the necessities of life can never truly be imposed by force alone, because people will always find ways to survive, to preserve dignity, and to resist oppression through intelligence, cooperation, and quiet, relentless persistence. And by the time Gareth finally recognized that his policies were failing, it was too late. The social, economic, and moral networks he had attempted to dominate were already firmly in place, and any further attempts to seize authority would only strengthen the resolve of the people he sought to control. A realization that slowly dawned upon him as he watched markets teeming with secretly traded salt, households quietly exchanging supplies, priests blessing and distributing without interference, and children delivering pouches under the noses of guards who dared not intervene. And in the end, this prolonged conflict over something as simple and essential as salt became a defining lesson in medieval governance, social resilience, and the inevitable consequences of trying to monetize what should remain a basic human right, leaving behind a story not only of greed and absurdity, but also of cleverness, solidarity, and the enduring power of ordinary people to outwit even the most determined attempts at oppression. The final unraveling of Lord Gareth's salt tax was a masterclass in how human ingenuity, community solidarity, and subtle resistance can render even the most ambitious schemes entirely ineffective. For while Gareth had imagined himself a visionary reformer, a man who could impose order on a chaotic world, in reality, he had only unleashed a chain reaction that demonstrated the limits of power and the resilience of ordinary people. And as months turned into a full year under the weight of his decree, the social, economic, and moral consequences became increasingly impossible to ignore. Families had perfected hidden storage techniques, from hollowed beams and false floorboards to cleverly disguised barrels in attics, while children acted as lookouts, messengers, and smugglers, creating a network of intelligence that allowed every household to anticipate inspections, evade detection, and maintain access to life's most essential mineral. And even the most cautious merchants began operating secret routes, disguising shipments, and collaborating across villages to ensure that supplies continued to circulate, while the clergy, quietly sympathetic to the hardships of their parishioners, offered spiritual cover and blessing ceremonies that allowed hidden stockpiles to move without interference. And together, these efforts created a self-sustaining system of covert distribution that effectively bypassed every EQ's aspect of Gareth's authority, making his rules unenforceable and his efforts increasingly absurd. For every new decree he issued was met with a fresh round of creative countermeasures, ingenious loopholes, and subtle acts of defiance, including forged licenses, false inventories, secret signals, and humor-laced songs that spread through the villages, mocking the salt tyrant and his obsession with control. A satire so effective that neighboring lords and visiting merchants began to whisper of his folly, further eroding his credibility while strengthening the solidarity and morale of those he sought to dominate. As winter approached, the consequences of Gareth's overreach became painfully tangible. For households that had ignored the tax or evaded it successfully were able to preserve meat, cheese, and fish through the harsh months, while any reliance on official supplies would have resulted in famine, a stark demonstration that attempts to control essentials without practical understanding inevitably fail. And yet, Gareth continued to insist that obedience and regulation were paramount, ordering more inspections, threatening fines, and demanding meticulous record-keeping, all while failing to realize that every action only reinforced the villagers' networks, taught them new tricks, and deepened their communal bonds, creating a society that had adapted not merely to survive, but to subvert tyranny with cleverness, patience, and humor. And this adaptation extended far beyond practical smuggling. It became a cultural exercise in resilience, a shared narrative of ingenuity, and a lesson in moral authority. For the people understood collectively that while a lord could claim legal ownership, he could never truly claim legitimacy over what belonged naturally to life itself. And in this understanding, the villagers discovered both power and freedom, subtle yet undeniable, a quiet victory in which every bucket, pouch, and hidden barrel represented a triumph of communal intelligence over imposed authority. And as news of Gareth's failures spread to other regions, his reputation shifted from feared noble to object of ridicule, earning him the moniker the Salt Tyrant in songs, poems, and stories, while simultaneously the villagers' cleverness became legendary, admired for the coordination, creativity, and humor with which ordinary people had resisted oppression without ever raising a sword. And this outcome reinforced a universal truth: control over the necessities of life, no matter how enforceable it may seem on paper, cannot override human adaptability, moral consensus, or the deep-rooted instinct to protect oneself and one's community from injustice. And when Gareth finally admitted defeat, rescinding the salt tax in a formal but humiliating announcement, it was not merely a policy reversal, but an acknowledgement, though grudging, of the limits of power, the strength of collective intelligence, and the futility of trying to monetize what fundamentally belongs to all. And though the immediate crisis faded, the story endured, passed down through generations, as a vivid cautionary tale about greed, bureaucracy, resilience, and the ability of communities to unite, resist, and thrive even under the strangest, most arbitrary, and most oppressive of rulers. A narrative that continues to resonate in historical study and folklore alike, proving that even in the rigidly hierarchical medieval world, the combination of ingenuity, unity, and subtle defiance could triumph over arbitrary authority, leaving behind lessons about fairness, cooperation, and the enduring power of the human spirit that remain as relevant today as they were over 6 centuries ago. In medieval times, bread was not merely a staple of daily sustenance. It was the cornerstone of life, the quiet hero of survival, and a cultural touchstone that transcended class, geography, and season, forming a link between peasants and nobles, market towns and remote villages, because every meal began or ended with bread in some form, whether coarse rye loaves baked in village ovens, soft white bread, darkened loaves that filled the bellies of laborers after long days in the fields. And yet, despite its centrality to life, bread remained for centuries a freely accessible necessity in many regions, regulated loosely by customary practices rather than harsh laws, baked in communal ovens, overseen by local guilds or lords who ensured fairness, and distributed in markets where it could be purchased at a price deemed reasonable by tradition rather than strict taxation, allowing ordinary people a reliable source of nourishment without fear of exploitation. And it was precisely this long-standing equilibrium of availability, fairness, and social expectation that made the eventual intervention by a certain medieval official so shocking and disruptive. For bread, unlike water or salt, required both skill and resources to produce, and attempting to control its production and consumption meant controlling the very rhythm of life itself. From the rise and fall of ovens to the movement of grain, the timing of harvests, and the work of bakers, millers, and merchants. And the man who would overreach in this arena was Sir Alaric Dunwood, a lord whose ambition, vanity, and love of control far outstripped his understanding of practical economics or human nature, and who became convinced that the production and sale of bread could be transformed into a highly profitable, tightly regulated enterprise that would cement his reputation as a visionary ruler. And yet his plan, conceived with all the self-assured confidence of a man blind to reality, ignored centuries of social, cultural, and practical knowledge, because bread was not merely a product. It was a living system, a combination of labor, natural resources, and communal norms, and to interfere with it recklessly was to destabilize every connected network in his domain, from the fields where wheat grew to the ovens where it was baked, to the families who relied upon it for their very survival. And in his eagerness to assert control, Alaric began issuing decrees that mandated licensing for every baker, miller, and grain transporter, imposed taxes on loaves that exceeded specific weight thresholds, and required extensive documentation of production, storage, and sale, while simultaneously restricting the sale of bread to authorized vendors, thereby concentrating power, wealth, and authority into the hands of the few who had access to permits, leaving ordinary citizens struggling to obtain even a modest loaf without breaking the law. And the results were immediate and severe. Markets became tense battlegrounds of suspicion. Villagers lined up for hours, hoping to purchase legally sanctioned bread. Bakers attempted to navigate the labyrinth of regulations while avoiding fines and imprisonment. And families improvised by creating their own clandestine ovens, experimenting with small-scale baking in secret to evade detection, while children and apprentices became messengers, couriers, and scouts, warning of inspections and smuggling tiny loaves between households. And the clergy, who understood the social and spiritual significance of bread, quietly intervened by blessing hidden ovens, hiding loaves in religious rituals, and preaching sermons that reminded the community that sustenance and morality could not be fully regulated by arbitrary laws. And as the months passed, a complex network of resistance emerged, echoing the patterns previously seen in water and salt, but this time even more sophisticated, because bread, unlike raw materials, required time, skill, and coordination to produce, and thus families, bakers, and merchants developed a multi-layered system of secret production, coded communication, diversionary tactics, and collaborative planning, using hidden chambers beneath homes, barns, and churches to store flour and baked loaves, signaling safe times for baking through laundry patterns, lantern positions, and the arrangement of simple household items, while apprentices learned the art of deception, substituting decoy loaves, forging weight records, and coordinating supply chains that spanned entire villages, ensuring that the population could maintain access to bread despite the draconian restrictions. And the ingenuity of these ordinary people was remarkable, not only for its practical effectiveness, but also for the psychological message it sent. The collective will, intelligence, and subtle defiance of the community could outmaneuver even the most ambitious noble. And as Sir Alaric's enforcement intensified, demanding reports, levies, and fines, the people responded with humor, cleverness, and patience, mocking the Lord in whispered songs, parodies, and satirical performances in markets, ensuring that the social and cultural memory of his overreach would endure, all while silently and effectively subverting his authority. And in the end, the tale of bread under Sir Alaric Dunwood's rule became a vivid illustration of the enduring principle that necessities of life, whether water, salt, or bread, cannot be monopolized without significant resistance, and that the combination of intelligence, community solidarity, creativity, and quiet courage can overcome even the most comprehensive attempts at control, leaving a legacy not of oppression but of subtle triumph, clever survival, and historical lessons in governance, fairness, and the unyielding human spirit. As the months progressed under Sir Alaric Dunwood's strict bread regulations, the consequences of his overreach began to ripple through every layer of medieval society, illustrating with startling clarity how interference with a basic necessity can generate far-reaching economic, social, and moral consequences. And the villagers, already adept at subtle resistance from observing the failures of water and salt regulations, adapted quickly to the oppressive measures, creating increasingly sophisticated networks for clandestine baking, distribution, and communication, which in turn fostered a renewed sense of unity, trust, and shared purpose among families, bakers, merchants, and even apprentices, who were taught from a young age not only the technical skills of bread production, but also the strategic ingenuity necessary to evade detection, preserve resources, and support the collective welfare. And while Sir Alaric issued heavier fines, demanded exhaustive records, and ordered inspections of mills, ovens, and warehouses, the people responded with quiet cleverness, digging hidden storage beneath floors, constructing false walls, and employing diversionary tactics to mislead inspectors, while small groups of children acted as lookouts and couriers, delivering secret messages and small loaves to households in need. And even the clergy participated indirectly, blessing secret ovens, distributing hidden bread during religious observances, and preaching subtle messages of moral resistance and communal care, thus creating a social system that was simultaneously functional, resilient, and largely invisible to the lordship, while simultaneously undermining the perception of authority Sir Alaric sought to impose. Economic ramifications also became apparent, for markets experienced wild fluctuations in bread availability and price, forcing merchants to engage in covert negotiations, coded exchanges, and smuggling operations, while families were forced to ration, preserve, and produce loaves at home, a practice that inadvertently strengthened skills, cooperation, and resourcefulness. And yet, despite the growing sophistication of this underground economy, Sir Alaric remained convinced of the righteousness and necessity of his policies, insisting that proper enforcement and regulation would eventually yield compliance and obedience, an arrogance that blinded him to the evolving social network around him and the fact that the villagers were developing not only practical solutions, but cultural narratives, humor, and satire aimed at highlighting the absurdity of his authority. 4 children composed songs mocking his meticulous inspections. Apprentices drew crude illustrations lampooning his obsession with licensing, and villagers shared whispered tales that elevated his failures to legendary status, transforming him from feared noble into a figure of ridicule whose decrees were spoken of with both anxiety and amusement, while simultaneously demonstrating the effectiveness of quiet, intelligent resistance. As the oppressive measures continued, the practical necessity of bread ensured that almost every household became involved in some form of subversive activity, from covert baking to secret trading, and this collective participation reinforced social cohesion, loyalty, and interdependence, allowing communities to survive without confrontation, violence, or widespread revolt, and instead relying on ingenuity, patience, and discipline to subvert authority, demonstrating that control over necessities of life is fundamentally limited by human creativity and moral consensus, and that even a well-resourced, powerful, and determined ruler cannot fully dominate a population that possesses both intelligence and shared purpose. And by the time Sir Alaric attempted to tighten regulations further, the social systems already in place ensured that his actions only strengthened the underground networks, making enforcement increasingly impractical, humiliating, and ultimately futile. And the legacy of this period endured as both a cautionary tale and a celebration of community resilience, illustrating that ordinary people, working together with cleverness, subtlety, and humor, can preserve essential resources, maintain social cohesion, and triumph morally and practically over arbitrary authority, while leaving rulers like Sir Alaric remembered not for their administrative genius, but for their inability to recognize the limits of their power, the resilience of those they sought to control, and the indomitable spirit of human communities in the face of unnecessary oppression. The culmination of Sir Alaric Dunwood's misguided attempt to control bread production revealed, more dramatically than any law, the extraordinary resilience, ingenuity, and solidarity of medieval communities. For, by the end of his first year of enforcement, the social and economic networks established to bypass his strict regulations had become deeply entrenched, transforming ordinary households, bakers, merchants, apprentices, and even clergy into a coordinated and highly effective system of clandestine production, distribution, and communication, and every aspect of daily life harvest schedules. MILLING, baking, storage, trade, and family meals was now interwoven with a quiet resistance that operated under the very nose of the lordship. And this network functioned with such subtlety, intelligence, and coordination that even the most attentive inspectors, patrols, and scribes were often deceived, delayed, or misdirected, leaving households with sufficient bread for sustenance while maintaining the illusion of compliance. And in the process, the villagers developed an unspoken culture of trust, cooperation, and ingenuity that not only preserved life but strengthened social bonds. For survival depended on collaboration, mutual protection, and the careful sharing of information. And as the months progressed, the ingenuity of the people became more creative and daring. With hidden chambers beneath floors and attics, secret flues leading to ovens in barns, coded lantern signals indicating safe times for baking, invisible routes between homes for discreet deliveries, and a network of couriers, often children, and apprentices capable of transporting small quantities of flour or loaves quickly and safely, while merchants employed sophisticated diversion tactics, false inventories, disguised shipments, and prearranged exchanges to maintain the appearance of legal compliance while feeding the hidden economy. And the clergy, understanding the spiritual, social, and moral importance of food, provided subtle support through blessings, ritual cover, and direct assistance in distributing hidden bread, all while ensuring the moral framework of the community remained intact. For even as Sir Alaric attempted to tighten his grip, increase taxes, impose heavier fines, and demand more detailed documentation, the villagers' adaptive strategies ensured that compliance was effectively impossible, and every new regulation was met not with confrontation but with ingenuity, cleverness, and humor, including parody songs, illustrations, whispered tales of the Lord's obsession, and public performances that highlighted the absurdity of his decrees, creating a cultural memory of resistance that extended beyond practical necessity into the realm of social identity and shared pride. And as winter arrived, the practical importance of these systems became clear. While households that relied on official channels faced scarcity, spoiled food, and despair, those engaged in the secret networks maintained sufficient stores, demonstrating that collective intelligence, creativity, and cooperation could not only overcome oppressive regulations, but also preserve life, dignity, and social cohesion. And the story of Sir Alaric's failure traveled far beyond the village, becoming legendary among neighboring towns and kingdoms, inspiring awe at the ingenuity of ordinary people, cautionary lessons for rulers, and enduring evidence that control over the essential elements of life water, salt bread, cannot be imposed by decree, force, or wealth alone. And that human resilience, collaboration, humor, and moral judgment remain among the most powerful forces in history. And when Sir Alaric finally acknowledged defeat, rescinding the regulations in a public and humiliating proclamation. The villagers did not merely celebrate the return of freedom. They commemorated their own cleverness, unity, and perseverance, recognizing that the ability to navigate oppression, protect one another, and outwit a determined but foolish authority was not only a triumph of survival, but a testament to the enduring power of human spirit, community, and creativity. And the story of bread under Sir Alaric Dunwood's rule remains, to this day, a vivid illustration of how ordinary people, when united by necessity, intelligence, and courage, can overcome even the most ambitious attempts at control, leaving behind lessons in social resilience, moral authority, and the fundamental principle that life's essentials cannot and should not be monopolized by any individual, no matter how powerful, and that history remembers not only the folly of rulers, but the quiet heroism of those who ensure that survival, dignity, and freedom endure. In medieval Europe, the humble and seemingly simple commodity of firewood played a role in daily life that extended far beyond warmth, encompassing cooking, metalwork, religious rituals, and communal gatherings. And for centuries, villagers, peasants, and small townspeople had relied on forests, commons, and shared woodpiles to meet their essential needs, taking only what was necessary, guided by tradition, communal oversight, and the tacit understanding that firewood was vital to survival, nourishment, and basic comfort. And while lords occasionally imposed limits or offered guidance, no individual had the audacity to monopolize it or charge exorbitantly for its collection, because firewood was considered a shared resource, as essential to life as water or grain, and the availability of fuel directly influenced the rhythm of daily activities. From baking bread to heating homes during bitter winters, to smelting metal in small workshops, and to fueling lamps that allowed households to extend productive hours after sunset. And it was precisely this equilibrium of accessibility, communal management, and tradition that made the eventual interference of Lord Reynard of Blackthorn so catastrophic, for he became convinced, in a manner strikingly similar to his predecessors who attempted to control water, salt, and bread, that regulating firewood was both his duty and a brilliant opportunity to assert authority, consolidate wealth, and demonstrate innovative governance. And, in his estimation, the forests were underutilized assets, ripe for taxation, monitoring, and licensing. And any deviation from his vision was interpreted as negligence or rebellion. Yet his enthusiasm for control ignored the centuries of local knowledge, sustainable practice, and informal oversight that had preserved forests while meeting human needs. And thus, when Lord Reynard decreed that all firewood collected from local forests required payment, licenses, and detailed record-keeping, the consequences were immediate, tangible, and far-reaching, disrupting not only domestic life, but also the operations of blacksmiths, bakers, potters, and other trades reliant on a consistent fuel source, while simultaneously creating logistical nightmares for his own enforcers, who were tasked with patrolling forests, inspecting logs, and monitoring the weight and origin of every bundle of wood, an exercise that quickly proved impractical given the vastness of the territory, the ingenuity of the villagers, and the limitations of medieval bureaucracy. And yet Reynard, blinded by ambition and self-importance, interpreted resistance not as systemic impossibility, but as moral failing on the part of his subjects, convinced that any shortage, complaint, or delay reflected their disregard for his authority. And as the villagers faced the prospect of fines, confiscation, and official penalties, they began to adapt in ways both subtle and remarkably effective, constructing hidden caches, collecting dead wood in secret, timing their visits to the forest to avoid patrols, and developing a sophisticated network of signals, codes, and communal strategies that allowed the safe movement and storage of firewood, while apprentices, children, and trusted neighbors acted as scouts, messengers, and lookouts, alerting households to the approach of inspectors and ensuring that no individual was left vulnerable to punitive measures. And this collective system of cooperation reinforced communal bonds, encouraged the sharing of resources, and cultivated a culture of ingenuity that extended well beyond the practicalities of fuel collection, for it fostered a shared sense of agency, resilience, and moral autonomy in the face of arbitrary authority, while simultaneously undermining Renard's capacity to enforce his laws. And as the months wore on, the practical, social, and economic impact of his regulation became impossible to ignore. Ovens grew cold in homes without access to hidden caches. Blacksmiths struggled to maintain productivity. Winter nights grew harsher for families forced to ration meager supplies, and the black market for illegally harvested or transported wood expanded rapidly, creating a parallel economy that was increasingly efficient, discreet, and impossible for Renard to detect fully. While stories of his failed policy spread throughout the region, inspiring satire, gossip, and cautionary tales that highlighted both his ambition and the ingenuity of the people he sought to control. And the villagers, drawing on centuries of experience with natural resources, reinforced their networks with rituals, codes, signals, and shared responsibility, creating a cultural and practical system in which the successful acquisition, storage, and use of firewood became both a matter of survival and an act of communal solidarity, demonstrating that the more Renard tried to impose control, the more the people adapted, perfected, and coordinated their strategies, effectively turning his policies into a source of social cohesion rather than compliance. And thus, in the tale of firewood under Lord Renard, one observes a pattern that has repeated across history: the attempt to monopolize, regulate, or tax a fundamental resource inevitably provokes human ingenuity, resistance, and adaptation, revealing not only the limits of authority, but also the enduring capacity of ordinary people to protect themselves, their families, and their communities through cooperation, creativity, and moral courage. A lesson that echoes not only through the forests and villages of medieval Europe, but into the present, underscoring the principle that essential resources, whether water, salt, bread, or firewood, cannot be effectively controlled through force alone, and that the combined intelligence, solidarity, and resilience of human communities remain among the most powerful forces in history, capable of circumventing even the most elaborate and ambitious attempts at domination and ensuring that life, survival, and dignity are preserved against folly, greed, and overreach. As Lord Renard's firewood tax and collection restrictions persisted, the social, economic, and practical consequences deepened. demonstrating in stark relief how attempts to control a basic necessity reverberate through every aspect of life. Because firewood was not merely fuel for warmth, it powered ovens for bread, furnaces for blacksmiths, kilns for pottery, lamps for households, and even heated spaces for religious observances. And when access became restricted, every household trade and communal activity was directly affected, creating a chain reaction that touched rich and poor alike, while simultaneously providing the villagers an incentive to develop increasingly sophisticated methods of evasion, concealment, and cooperative logistics. For ordinary people understood that survival depended not merely on individual ingenuity, but on collective action, shared intelligence, and trust. And so networks of secret paths, hidden caches, timed collection schedules, and coded communication evolved, allowing families, bakers, blacksmiths, and apprentices to coordinate their efforts while remaining largely invisible to Renard's inspectors, who were demoralized, bribed, or misled at every turn. And these adaptations reinforced social cohesion, mutual reliance, and a sense of shared purpose, transforming resistance into a cultural as well as practical phenomenon. And even the clergy subtly participated by blessing hidden woodpiles, providing moral support for covert operations, and framing the struggle as a defense of natural rights and communal well-being, a strategy that discouraged overzealous enforcement and strengthened the ethical foundation of the villagers' actions, while markets responded to scarcity with ingenuity as well. For merchants devised covert transport systems, falsified inventory records, disguised firewood as other commodities, and coordinated with neighboring villages to ensure steady supply, thereby creating a clandestine economy that operated parallel to the lordship's official channels. And the success of these operations was amplified by humor, satire, and narrative, with children composing songs mocking Renard's obsession with control, apprentices drawing illustrations lampooning his regulations, and villagers whispering tales that framed his attempts as folly, reinforcing collective morale while eroding his prestige. And as winter approached, the practical benefits of these systems became painfully evident. Households with access to hidden caches maintained warmth, baked bread, preserved goods, and continued essential work, while those relying on official supply suffered scarcity, delayed production, and disrupted routines, an outcome that highlighted the futility of overreach and the necessity of practical understanding when governing resources. And yet Renard, stubborn and blinded by ambition, continued to escalate enforcement, issuing more inspections, higher fines, and stricter regulations, oblivious to the fact that every increase in pressure only strengthened the villagers' coordination, teaching them new methods of concealment, reinforcing their networks, and enhancing their sense of moral and practical agency. And as time passed, these practices became ingrained cultural knowledge, passed between generations, and solidifying a sense of community identity based on resilience, ingenuity, and the collective capacity to navigate oppression. And the culmination of these efforts was a system in which firewood, despite official restrictions, flowed consistently to those who needed it, delivered discreetly by messengers, transported through hidden routes, stored in secret caches, and coordinated with families and tradespeople across villages. while the Lord's inspectors, overwhelmed and outwitted at every turn, could do little beyond issuing futile decrees, an outcome that served as both practical relief and symbolic victory for the community. And the story of Lord Renard's firewood debacle endured as a vivid illustration of human adaptability, social cohesion, and the limits of authority, demonstrating that attempts to control fundamental resources not only fail without practical understanding, but also empower communities to innovate, cooperate, and resist in ways that strengthen social bonds, moral consensus, and cultural identity. And in this tale of firewood, one observes a recurring historical principle. When rulers attempt to monopolize, regulate, or exploit essential necessities, ordinary people respond with intelligence, unity, and creativity that ultimately renders such control both ineffective and historically memorable, leaving behind lessons that resonate across generations about the balance of power, fairness, survival, and the indomitable capacity of communities to preserve life, dignity, and autonomy, even under the most ambitious and ill-conceived attempts at domination. The final chapter of Lord Renard of Blackthorn's firewood fiasco revealed, more vividly than any law or decree, the extraordinary resilience, intelligence, and cooperative spirit of medieval communities when faced with the arbitrary and overreaching authority of a ruler. For by the end of his first year of strict firewood regulations, the villagers, tradespeople, apprentices, and clergy had perfected a network of hidden caches, secret collection routes, timed schedules, coded communication, and moral strategies that ensured the steady supply of fuel despite the lordship's attempts to monopolize the forests. And every household, blacksmith, baker, and artisan became part of an interdependent system in which survival, warmth, and productivity depended on shared intelligence, trust, and collective ingenuity. And as inspections intensified, fines escalated, and the bureaucratic burden grew heavier, the villagers' adaptive measures multiplied in sophistication, with covert paths that connected multiple homes and villages, hidden storage beneath floors, false walls in barns, nighttime collection teams guided by lantern signals, and apprentices acting as discreet messengers, while clergy provided blessing ceremonies and moral cover, reinforcing the ethical justification of the clandestine operations. And the practical effectiveness of these systems was matched by their cultural impact. 4 songs, parodies, and whispered stories mocked the Lord's obsession with control, strengthened communal morale, and passed down critical knowledge and strategies to younger generations, creating a legacy of resilience that transcended the immediate crisis. And as winter's harshness tested the limits of survival, households with access to hidden caches maintained warmth, prepared meals, and continued essential crafts, while those reliant on official sources suffered scarcity, reinforcing the power of collective action and the futility of arbitrary enforcement. And yet Renard, blinded by pride and ambition, refused to relent, issuing ever stricter regulations, demanding precise inventories, and deploying more inspectors, failing entirely to grasp that every action taken to increase control only enhanced the coordination, sophistication, and moral resolve of the villagers. For human ingenuity, when combined with necessity and solidarity, proves far more formidable than bureaucracy, punishment, or decree. And as these networks matured, the villagers demonstrated remarkable creativity and adaptability, disguising firewood as other goods, employing decoy shipments, synchronizing collection times, coordinating across households and trades, and using invisible signals to communicate forest patrol schedules, all while maintaining a functional economy, supporting essential work and preserving life itself. And the cumulative effect of these systems was transformative. Communities grew closer, social bonds strengthened, knowledge of resource management expanded, and moral authority shifted away from an overreaching lord toward the collective wisdom of ordinary people, illustrating in practice a universal historical truth that control over basic necessities is inherently limited when confronted by human cooperation, intelligence, and moral awareness. And the legacy of Lord Renard's failed firewood policy endured far beyond the immediate generation, becoming a story of cunning, solidarity, and cultural memory, passed down as a lesson in resilience, ingenuity, and the importance of community in the face of arbitrary power, showing that even when rulers attempt to dominate resources essential to life, the ordinary people who rely upon them possess the capacity to adapt, resist, and preserve survival, morality, and social cohesion. And in the end, Renard's regulations were rescinded in a public acknowledgement of failure. But the villagers had already won far more than legal compliance. They had preserved warmth, life, culture, and community, leaving behind a narrative that demonstrates the enduring power of human creativity, collective intelligence, and cooperation in the face of oppression, proving once again that when rulers attempt to monopolize essentials like water, salt, bread, or firewood, the resilience and ingenuity of ordinary people will invariably prevail. And history will remember not the Lord's ambition, but the quiet heroism, cunning, and communal strength of those who ensure survival. Dignity and freedom endure despite folly, greed, and overreach. In medieval society, the humble resource of water was arguably the most critical element of survival, shaping agriculture, hygiene, cooking, livestock care, and sanitation. And for centuries, villagers, townspeople, and peasants relied on rivers, wells, streams, and communal fountains with relatively unrestricted access, guided by tradition, mutual respect, and local custom, allowing communities to function smoothly while maintaining a balance between usage and sustainability. And in this equilibrium, water was both a shared necessity and a unifying social resource, fostering communal rituals, market trade, and daily routines that connected households, artisans, and farmers. Yet, it was precisely this accessibility that eventually drew the attention of Lord Cedric of Ravenswood, a ruler whose ambition, arrogance, and obsession with control led him to believe that water itself could be monetized, regulated, and weaponized to demonstrate his administrative brilliance and consolidate power. And in his estimation, controlling water access would ensure obedience, generate revenue, and establish him as a visionary lord. But Cedric's plan ignored centuries of practical knowledge, social norms, and ecological constraints. And when he decreed that all wells, rivers, and fountains within his territory were to be taxed, licensed, and strictly monitored, the effects were immediate and devastating, disrupting households, agriculture, artisanal trades, and communal life, while simultaneously imposing a logistical nightmare on his enforcers, who were charged with measuring consumption, collecting fees, and ensuring compliance, a task rendered virtually impossible by the geography of rivers, hidden streams, private wells, and the ingenuity of the people. And as the villagers faced the threat of fines, confiscation, and punishment, they began to adapt with remarkable speed and creativity, constructing hidden systems, collecting rainwater, digging concealed wells, and developing covert distribution systems that allowed households, farms, and tradespeople to access water without detection, while apprentices, children, and trusted neighbors acted as messengers, scouts, and guardians, alerting families to inspections, patrols, and tax collectors. And these networks of cooperation not only preserved survival, but also reinforced social cohesion, trust, and collective intelligence. For every member of the community played a role in ensuring that the essential flow of water continued despite the oppressive decree, and even the clergy became subtly involved, blessing hidden wells, endorsing rainwater collection, and framing resistance as a moral and ethical imperative to protect life and community, while markets adapted through coded exchanges, secret deliveries, and disguised storage, creating a parallel economy that functioned efficiently and invisibly. And as the enforcement intensified with heavier fines, inspections, and bureaucratic record-keeping, the villagers' networks grew more sophisticated, employing hidden reservoirs, diversion techniques, synchronized collection times, and signals such as lanterns, laundry, and symbolic gestures to communicate forest and river patrol schedules. And the humor and satire of the community flourished alongside practical strategies, with songs, parodies, stories, and performances mocking Lord Cedric's obsession with water control, building morale, reinforcing cultural memory, and passing critical knowledge to younger generations. And as the dry season approached, households with access to hidden water caches could continue to cook, wash, irrigate, and sustain livestock, while those relying solely on taxed or official sources struggled with scarcity, illustrating the practical superiority of community adaptation and the futility of arbitrary enforcement. And as Cedric escalated regulations demanding inventories, licenses, and payments, the villagers' covert networks adapted in real time, transforming every new restriction into an opportunity for enhanced coordination, secret messaging, and collective resilience. And the cumulative effect of these efforts was profound. Water, despite official restrictions, continued to flow to the people, sustaining life, productivity, and morale, while the Lord's authority diminished in both practical and moral terms. And the story of Lord Cedric's failed water monopoly endured as a lasting lesson in history, showing that human ingenuity, cooperation, and ethical solidarity can overcome arbitrary and ill-conceived control, ensuring the survival, dignity, and autonomy of ordinary people. And that even the most ambitious ruler, when confronted with the combined intelligence and determination of a community, will ultimately fail, leaving behind a cautionary tale about greed, overreach, and the enduring power of collective resilience. And in this narrative, one sees once again a universal principle repeated across time: necessities of life, whether water, salt, bread, or firewood, cannot be monopolized without generating resistance, creativity, and communal cohesion. And history remembers not only the folly of rulers, but the quiet heroism, cleverness, and moral courage of those who ensure that life, resources, and freedom endure despite oppression, overreach, and arbitrary authority, illustrating that survival and dignity depend not on decree, but on the collective intelligence, ingenuity, and solidarity of ordinary people. As Lord Cedric of Ravenswood's water regulations continued, the consequences for daily life, agriculture, trade, and survival intensified dramatically, demonstrating in stark terms the interconnectedness of essential resources and the limits of imposed authority. For water was not merely a basic necessity, but a foundational element of medieval existence, underpinning the preparation of food, maintenance of hygiene, livestock care, irrigation of crops, and functioning of artisanal workshops. And when access became tightly regulated, the disruption extended far beyond individual households, rippling through markets, farms, and guilds, creating stress, scarcity, and a pressing need for collective problem-solving. And the villagers, building upon centuries of knowledge and prior experiences with overreach in salt, bread, rapidly devised sophisticated and adaptive strategies to circumvent Cedric's decrees, constructing concealed cisterns, underground wells, rainwater collection systems, diversion channels, and hidden storage containers that allowed families, farmers, and tradespeople to access necessary water without detection, while children, apprentices, and trusted community members served as scouts, messengers, and coordinators, ensuring timely communication about inspections, patrols, and the movements of tax collectors. And these networks were reinforced by shared trust, mutual dependence, and cultural traditions that emphasized cooperation, responsibility, and ethical stewardship of resources. While the clergy participated subtly, blessing hidden water sources, framing resistance as moral necessity, and providing guidance that strengthened both the spiritual and practical resilience of the population. And as markets adapted to scarcity, merchants coordinated clandestine exchanges, disguised water containers, and developed covert delivery routes, effectively creating a parallel economy that operated invisibly to Cedric's authority, while sustaining trade, livelihood, and social cohesion. And with every escalation in regulation, inspection, or fine imposed by the Lord, the villagers' ingenuity increased as they refined signaling systems using lanterns, laundry, gestures, and other subtle indicators to warn of approaching patrols, synchronize collection efforts, and distribute water equitably within the community. And the practical, social, and cultural sophistication of these measures was matched by humor and satire, with songs, parodies, and stories circulating among families and neighbors, mocking Cedric's obsession, reinforcing morale, and transmitting critical strategies and collective knowledge to younger generations. And as the dry season and heat intensified, households with access to hidden water caches maintained hygiene, cooked food, irrigated gardens, and sustained livestock, while those relying solely on taxed or monitored sources faced dehydration, crop loss, and physical stress, highlighting the effectiveness of adaptive communal strategies over arbitrary authority. And yet Cedric, blinded by pride and ambition, persisted in issuing new decrees, demanding detailed reports, enforcing permits, and threatening severe punishments, failing to recognize that each escalation only strengthened the village networks, increased cooperation, and enhanced the moral and practical resolve of the people. For human ingenuity, necessity, and solidarity proved far more powerful than any bureaucratic or coercive measure. And over time, the villagers' hidden water networks became deeply institutionalized, ingrained in cultural memory and interwoven with local practices, reinforcing social cohesion, knowledge sharing, and a sense of communal identity. While Cedric's authority, both practical and moral, eroded in the face of visible and effective resistance, and the ultimate outcome was both practical and symbolic. Water continued to flow to those who needed it. Life and productivity persisted, and the community emerged stronger, more unified, and more knowledgeable, while the Lord's ambitions were humiliated by failure, leaving a legacy that emphasized the enduring principles of human creativity, cooperation, and moral judgment, and the story of Cedric's water monopoly, like those of salt, bread, and firewood before it, became a cautionary and inspiring tale illustrating that necessities of life cannot be monopolized without resistance, that ordinary people possess extraordinary capacity for adaptation, and that the combination of ingenuity, collaboration, and ethical awareness will ultimately prevail over arbitrary authority, ensuring that survival, dignity, and freedom remain in the hands of those who understand the fundamental importance of community, trust, and resilience, a lesson that resonates throughout history, reminding us that human resourcefulness, intelligence, and solidarity are among the most powerful forces in shaping societies, countering oppression, and preserving essential life in the face of greed, folly, and overreach. The ultimate resolution of Lord Cedric of Ravenswood's attempt to control water revealed, more clearly than any law or decree, the profound ingenuity, solidarity, and moral courage of medieval communities when confronted with arbitrary authority. For, by the end of his first year of strict water regulations, households, farmers, artisans, apprentices, children, and clergy had perfected an intricate and highly effective system of hidden cisterns, underground wells, rainwater collection, diversion channels, and coordinated delivery networks that ensured the continued flow of water to those who needed it, sustaining survival, hygiene, food preparation, agriculture, and essential trade, while remaining largely invisible to Cedric's inspectors, who were demoralized, bribed, misled, or entirely deceived by the villagers' careful planning. And the practical sophistication of these networks was matched by their cultural and moral dimensions. For the community employed coded signals, lanterns, laundry patterns, and symbolic gestures to communicate the approach of patrols, coordinate collection schedules, and distribute resources equitably, while songs, parodies, and stories circulated, reinforcing morale, teaching critical strategies to younger generations, and embedding a sense of pride, humor, and resilience within the social fabric. And the clergy participated subtly, blessing hidden water sources, framing covert collection as a moral and ethical responsibility, and ensuring that resistance aligned with spiritual and communal values, while merchants coordinated clandestine trade, disguised water containers, and maintained the functioning of local markets despite the oppressive regulations. And the practical impact of these measures was immediately apparent. Households with access to hidden water maintained essential daily functions, irrigated gardens, fed livestock, and preserved hygiene, while those relying solely on taxed or monitored sources suffered scarcity, reduced productivity, and elevated risk of disease, illustrating the practical efficacy of collective ingenuity over arbitrary authority. And yet Cedric persisted in issuing increasingly complex and punitive regulations, demanding detailed inventories, licenses, and payments, failing to understand that every escalation strengthened the villagers' networks, reinforced cooperation, and deepened moral and practical resolve. For the combination of human creativity, necessity, and solidarity consistently outmaneuvered bureaucracy, punishment, and coercion, and over time, these adaptive strategies became embedded in local culture, passed down from generation to generation, reinforcing communal identity, knowledge sharing, and social cohesion, while the Lord's authority, both practical and moral, eroded in the face of effective, sustained resistance. And the narrative of Cedric's failed water monopoly endured as both a cautionary tale and an inspiring example, demonstrating that even the most ambitious ruler, when confronted with collective intelligence, collaboration, and ethical judgment, will ultimately fail, leaving a legacy in which the ordinary people emerge victorious, their survival, dignity, and freedom preserved through ingenuity, cooperation, and courage. And in reflecting on the historical pattern repeated across water, salt, bread, and firewood, one observes a fundamental principle: necessities of life cannot be monopolized without provoking resistance, ingenuity, and communal cohesion. And history remembers not only the folly of overreaching rulers, but also the quiet heroism, strategic cleverness, and moral resilience of ordinary people who ensure that life, resources, and freedom endure, highlighting the enduring power of human resourcefulness, collective intelligence, and social solidarity to overcome oppression, safeguard essential survival, and preserve community, culture, and dignity. And the story of water under Lord Cedric, like those of previous resources, remains a timeless lesson in governance, fairness, adaptability, and the unyielding capacity of people to protect life, collaborate creatively, and resist arbitrary authority, proving that while rulers may attempt to dominate, human resilience, cooperation, and ingenuity will always find a way to preserve survival, morality, and social cohesion.